father and a mother killing their own daughters in the most brutal, savage, barbaric fashion ever. And they did so because they believed in miracle, because they were so blinded by superstition and in terms of divine intervention that they thought beating their own daughters, adult daughters, young to lives, beating them with dumbbells and smashing their heads and bludgeoning them till they stopped breathing would somehow cure the world of all the problems we are facing today in this Kal Yuga, as many call it. So this is what happened in Chittoor in Andhra Pradesh. A couple, one of them, the mother, principal at a private institute, the father, vice principal in a college, performed a puja in their house on 24th. They claimed that they got a divine message to sacrifice their own daughters. And they believed that if they follow this ritual, follow this entire process, crush the heads of their own daughters, that by sunrise, somehow, magically, by a miracle, the daughters will come alive. The younger one was stabbed with a trident. The older one was beaten with dumbbells with a copper vessel kept on her mouth. These two have now been arrested. But what is concerning to me is they are supposed to be well educated. They're supposed to be educators, in fact, a principal and a vice principal. And they got so blinded by their own superstition that Purushottam, the father of the deceased girls, a vice principal in a government women's degree college, and Padmaja, mother of the deceased girls, a principal in a private educational institute in Chittoor, took their own daughters' lives. Now, as I bring to you this story, let's try and understand, where are we going wrong? How do we fight this superstition? And the big challenge of having such people in the system where you're imparting education and teaching your children who will then grow up and decide the future of this country. Let's say good evening to Sanal Edamaruku, President of the Indian Rationalist Association, K.S. Sudhir, political analyst, Dr. Manisha Priyam, senior academician, and Dr. N.C. Asthana, former DGP of Kerala, joining us this evening. Manisha Priyam, good evening to you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
I wanted to start off with you to get an understanding of, does this surprise you that there is this kind of widespread, prevalent superstition even amongst the top notch of our educators?
No. Far from surprising us, this tells you exactly who we are. This is a world that is faced by the biggest challenge of logic and science. The only way we can get out of this world is by reason, science, knowledge, right? You've heard the inaugural of the American presidency, after which Dr. Anthony Fauci has said, let science and not politics lead us. But here it is not even politics. It is such a heinous belief in witchcraft and witch hunt that you tend to devour your own children. Is this anything? Does this have anything to do with what we consider to be humanity? Does this have anything to do with what we consider to be the best in human beings? Does this have anything to do with the world that we made safe, saying that this is the world in which human beings will look after the rights of humans? So in a sense, this is so bad that human beings in India today willing to devour the body of their own children. How badly and lowly are we? I can say this very clearly, that the situation that Raja Ram Mohan Roy faced when he saw the young ones in his own state being burnt alive on pyres, the widows, the child widows. It is that India that we are talking about. It is the problems with us, where we will say that education is not equal to reason, education not equal to science. Am I surprised then that Indians can go to America and win a Nobel Prize? Indians can become scientists elsewhere. But in India, we will continue to believe in witch hunt and witchcraft. And I think this type of anomaly will have to be put an end to. The scientific temper that should have embraced all of us in society is far from becoming the cornerstone of society if today we don't speak up for reason, if today we don't speak up for science, if today we don't speak up for knowledge, if today we don't speak up for the rights of humans as humans. Look at this, that a mother willing to devour her 22 and 27-year-old daughters for her beliefs, not believing in the architecture of law of this country, of constitution of this country. What is ruling? What are the ideas that rule this country? I'm surprised and stunned and shocked today. I'm shocked today. This is the level to which, and this is an India in which if witchcraft is so prevalent and these beliefs are so prevalent, where is the rational fighting against these beliefs?
Yes.
Where is there Rabindranath Tagore? Where is the Raja Ram Mohan Roy? Who is standing up for reason, science, knowledge, advancement?
You know,
They
and
only up for showing weddings, glorified weddings, daughters in beautiful clothes. You know, what is happening? Where is that social reformer?
Absolutely, Dr. Priyam. And you know,
Also,
even when we talk about these biggest of the names, icons of social reform who attempted it in their times and led the change in their times, we often tend to forget picking up on the social reform part. We want to, you know, politicize it. We want to fight over legacies and icons, but we forget that the actual intention is to learn from what they did and continue that movement. Now, if I may actually just pick up on that point and go across, you know, to our other panelists as well. Sanal, to you this question, because you would be able to give us more insights.
Yes. Yeah, I would like. I mean, this is not a unique thing that people are getting shocked. Why we are getting more shocked is that the people involved here are highly educated.
Correct.
As officially seen, we have nearly 10 human sacrifices officially in India, but the unofficial figures would be several times more. I have personal information from many places that human sacrifices do happen in many parts of India, but they are not shown as ritualistic human sacrifices. Why? Because it is looking bad and it's to be covered up. But the whole issue is to be addressed at 2-3 different levels. Number one, speaking about science is one thing, but developing scientific attitude and scientific temper is a different thing. What we lack is scientific attitude. People who, for example, teaching science can be very superstitious on the other side. So there should be a public awareness what is scientific attitude, and that has to be promoted. And secondly, at a very mundane level, the lack of public education on human psychology or human mind is very serious problem in India. For example, the kind of suicides that we have, the kind of ritualistic killings we have, these are not only to be seen as influenced by the Babas and Gurus, but also as psychotic reactions. Some people are so vulnerable, so superstitious, hyper superstitious, and they're ready to accept anything that is told or read somewhere. So they are the most vulnerable people who would go into such thing. So if you have a public understanding about human psychology, human problems, when people turn like that, there should be a monitoring of that. There should be a controlling on that. There should be, like when somebody is going at a suicide tendency, there are places for help, public helpline centers are there. Similarly, if somebody is getting so vulnerable, so much into this occult, so much into the superstition, there should be a helpline somewhere to help them to understand them. One more point I would like to say, that it's not that all gurus and all babas are doing these kind of things. That's also to be seen, because it's a wide spectrum. But some people use their religious authority and their authority as heroes use their, ideas on people. But how that is going to influence people are to be monitored. So these people have freedom to preach or practice what they want to the extent that it is not affecting the public health and public, safety. So therefore, there should be a close monitoring of the teaching of these gurus and babas, and that's the only way to address this issue.
Okay, in fact, the point that you made, Mr. Sanal, the fact that our data, our official data perhaps doesn't even capture the reality. And every year, even as per the NCRB data, I'm looking at some of it right now. Children sacrifice in 2019, 10. Witchcraft cases over 100. In 2018, 4 children or human sacrifices were made. Witchcraft cases 63. In 2017, it was a bigger number. Child or human sacrifice went up to 19, and I'm sure there was a lot more that doesn't get captured into this. Dr. Asthana, in all of your experience, from the policing days, just how prevalent is this? And again, I want to emphasize that we're all a little bit more shocked today and concerned today because where it's coming from. A principal and a vice principal, people who are meant to understand science and facts and teach that to our children.
I would like to put across a couple of points. First, the Article 51A bracket H of the Constitution of India, which says that it shall be the duty of every citizen, one of the fundamental duties, is to develop scientific temper and a spirit of inquiry. This was introduced in 1976. 54 years have passed, and as you have seen, apparently this man was a PhD in chemistry. Science education is not synonymous with developing scientific temper. In a country where we break coconuts even before firing rockets, scientific temper is far from coming, and there is no reason to believe that such heinous practices can be stopped with enacting special laws for that, because IPC already has enough provisions for that. It's not going to help. But one point for the benefit of the viewers, I must clarify here that particularly in the West, people have a general belief that Tantra is an integral part of Hindu religion. I must clarify here, and I will cite authorities, that it is not so. The first authority I cite is none other than a Bharat Ratna, Mahamahopadhyay, Dr. Pandurang Vaman Kale, who in his 5-volume History of the Dharma Shastras states it very clearly that Tantra is not approved by classical Hinduism, that is the Vedic tradition. Okay, number 2, I am citing 2 authorities who wrote their books in 1929 and 1939 respectively. I am emphasizing the period because in that period, scholarship was not, so to say, tainted by political thought. The 1929 work is by a highly erudite man called Pandit Jayadev Sharma. It is Atharvaved Samhita Bhasha Bhashya, in which he establishes that the popular belief that Atharvaved has some reference to Tantra is wrong, and he has shown that this wrong misconception has been derived from a book called Kaushik Grihya Sutra. The third reference I would cite is that of Pandit Ramdas Gaud in his 1939 book Hindutva. He has very clearly stated that Tantra as such is fraud, and none of the Mahapurans make a reference to it. Then, as we are aware, Huensang came in the 7th century, and till such time, he has not made any reference to Tantra. All the Tantric practices have originated after the 7th century. So this is not really the classical Hindu tradition. And you just made a reference to the NCRB data. I have calculated the average of the past 4 years. It comes to 93 cases of witchcraft and 11 cases of human sacrifice per year.
Yes.
At the moment, I am residing in Rajasthan, and we keep on getting reports of human sacrifice for various purposes. Recently, one in Alwar, boy's dead body was found with the nose and ears cut off, which the police strongly suspected was a case of human sacrifice. The point being made is that what we should do is to inculcate scientific temper, and it cannot be done merely by enacting laws. We already have enough laws. Davolkar Sahab sacrificed his life fighting for that cause. It didn't help. And I believe Mr. Sanal is still abroad. I believe so. He has not come back yet. He himself is a victim of uh, such type of persecution. So it's very unfortunate that 73 years after independence and 54 years after introducing Article 51AH, we have yet to develop a scientific temper in this country. After all, had there been scientific temper during the corona pandemic, we would not have been flooded with all sorts of fraudulent medicines, which did, without an iota of evidence that they work at all.
Yes. Absolutely. In fact, you gave examples in Rajasthan news and stories that you've heard from small towns like Alwar. This is an example from a small little town in Chittoor district in Andhra Pradesh. But it's not limited to one part of the country, Mr. T.S. Sudhir. I still remember a couple of years ago, there was this big case that happened in Delhi. It got titled the Burari deaths, where a family of 11 hanged themselves as part of whatever ritual that they were following, a ritual or occult practice gone wrong. But it's across cities and towns in our country, something that we don't openly want to speak about or address.
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at it from the prism of a Mumbai, Delhi, or a Kolkata, or even a Chennai, Madanapalli, of course, comes across as a small town, but geographically being very, very close to both Chennai and Bengaluru, Madanapalli is actually a very bustling town. I find it quite interesting that Dr. Manisha Prem referred to Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, and it's quite interesting that the tune for Janagana Mana, our national anthem, was actually made by Gurudev Tagore while he was at the Theosophical the college in Madanapalli in the year 1919. So there is that historical context there. But let me not digress and let me not add to what people have already said here on this panel. But what I see, and this is what many experts as well as the police which is investigating this particular case say, that this is a case of psychological hysteria. And that's what they really make out. Yes, both the mother and the father, extremely educated, working in colleges, one dealing with chemistry, one dealing with mathematics, but they seem to be completely overtaken by this irrational belief, by this superstition that if one daughter was killed, it would benefit the other daughter. In fact, what the SP has told us is that the parents also had plans to kill themselves because they believed that if the second daughter had to be saved, one of the parents also had to be killed. So it was seeming like a bit of a serious kind of a killing and extremely bizarre and something which you would not really expect from educators. So what would really be required is, of course, the police are investigating and looking at the entire CCTV footage, right? Because obviously they will be looking at it as a crime scene, as a place where a crime has taken place. But is it only CCTVs which will provide the answers? Because to my mind, their online, whatever they have been looking at online, who they have interacted with over Zoom, over Skype, over WhatsApp calls, that call history is going to be extremely significant to know whether there was any kind of outside influence. There seems to be the influence of some kind of occult, but whether some kind of a godman or some kind of a figure was involved, the police still don't know yet. They said it's still part of the investigation. The other important point that Dr. Asthana also referred to is the fact that while we all talk about physical health, physical literacy, the fact that we should have more playgrounds, more emphasis on sports, there isn't enough emphasis which is placed on mental health. And what has happened, unfortunately, in Madanapalli yesterday is a classic example of that. Through the lockdown, the family was believed to be isolating themselves. The domestic help were not working there. They weren't really in touch, so to say, with the outside world. The neighbors found them extremely reclusive. So there was a sense of inward looking by all the four members of the family. And that's something very disturbing. So when you are living in a society, in a town like Madanapalli, where almost everyone would know each other, this is extremely disturbing that no one really comes to know what is happening inside the world. The CCTVs would only give you an image, a peek into what's happening in the streets, who is coming into the house, who is exiting the house, but what's going on inside the minds of highly educated people like this, unfortunately, no CCTV in the world would really be able to find out. And that's it is for that you need people who can reach out, neighbors, relatives. One of the relatives has told the police that the mother suffered from some kind of psychiatric issue. So all that will be part of the investigation process.
Yeah, in fact, this is their profile. The father, Purushottam Naidu, MSc, PhD, worked as an associate professor in the Government Women's Degree College. She is also the college's vice principal. Mother Padmaja, a postgraduate and a gold medalist, correspondent and principal of a local private school. That is their profile. So then, Sanal, is it possible that, you know, there was a larger psychiatric issue where then the lines really got blurred for them, and, you know, at some point they couldn't make out the difference between the truth and miracles or the reality?
You know, there is a situation that, you know, you lose contact with realities. When you have when you are in a psychotic situation, you lose contact with the reality and you start living in a delusional world. And the problem is that if there is a leading person whose words are taken without questioning, there is an authority established, and there is a group delusion established very fast. It's the same like having, for example. If there is one person who is very powerful, commanding, and his views, and if he is in a delusional trap, he can, knowingly or unknowingly, he can get the whole people around him into the delusional group, and they will all carry the same pattern of belief or rituals that he would be asking for. Murari, it happened the same way. There was only one person, and eventually a second person who initiated the whole thing. Here, apparently, the father and the mother got into the same delusional trap. So therefore, I would always suggest that the vulnerable section of the population, it's in any given population. It's not only in India. Let's not speak that India is superstitious. But I know that everywhere in the world, a major section of the people, 10 to 15% of the people, are vulnerable to any kind of superstitions, and they are susceptible to any kind of influences. So these are the people who are becoming victims. So therefore, we have to look at this issue in very different angles. And I would insist that the gurus or the babas should be monitored in a way that if they are, you know, whatever preachings that they have, if that's going out of the way, there should be some kind of close understanding about that. Also, the community should look at people. Yeah. And if there is anybody turning different, should report. And these are to be, and on the other side, we should have a mass public education to develop scientific attitude and scientific approach to address these kind of issues.
Well, Mr. Sanal, I agree with you when you say mass public education, but right now I'm also, wondering who is going to be imparting that for a country as big as ours when college principals and teachers themselves are falling prey to this. I'll come back to you. Dr. Priyam actually disagrees with the point that is being made here. Yes, Manisha Priyam.
So, see, I completely disagree with this. To portray this family as unique and delusional, I think when you harbor an idea wherein you decide to take a dumbbell and smother the lives out of your own daughters, it is a deliberated act, right? It is not done in a delusional lockup of your own home. It is done when you are not challenged enough in your wrong beliefs. It is done when the society at large is not dealing with logic and reason. You do a wrong thing. The husband and wife were both going to school and college respectively. Logic, reason, and argument was a daily exposure to both of them. Had there been people who were out of job and staying in a house, thrown out by society, I would have understood this. These were people regularly in touch with imparting the highest standards of knowledge, of science, of modernity. Let them not be justified by saying that in any society, 15, no, not even one case can be justified. I look down on a society that does not check such thoughts when they are in the making, in the incubation. Whether it was a Baba or not, I do not know. Because these two were not Babas.
Correct.
One of them is a science teacher and a gold medalist. The other one is a school teacher. I think the general increase in tolerance of society, it can be anybody's thought, let us not say something if this is religious. I mean, here on the same panel, there's been someone who's quoted chapter and verse from so many religious documents. So basically, I feel that people in India are not even reading the Hindu scriptures properly. On the same panel, there was somebody who said Tantra, etc., is rejected by. So I am not so scholarly and so wise, but I understand very clearly that the tenets of reason and tenets of science have to be respected. And two people in a place like Madanpalli, Chittoor has been a district where I've worked, for my research. In a place like Madanpalli, you find two people who can pick up their dumbbells. I mean, they have developed the confidence that their belief is so strong that they can take on law, reason, science. Their own daughters' lives are, something that is within their power and control. So they don't fear the Constitution. They don't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe in the rights of human beings to live. They don't believe in the powers of science.
Yes, and they
And I think not a case of 10% being mad and some Baba preaching this. I'm sorry about this. It is the question of a society that needs to come out so strongly and openly that let there be no confusion that as Indians, even if we look up to our ancient values and civilization that I'm certainly very proud of, wearing the bindi or wearing the sari does not mean that I'll pick up the dumbbell and go and kill my own daughter. I like my art, my music, my culture. Which of these tells me to pick up the dumbbell and go and kill my own daughter? I think a wrong is a wrong. Don't justify a wrong by saying that they're part of a 10 or 15%, some godman. No. Why is this godman? If he's there, why is he thriving? Moment you have this wrong belief, you need to be punished.
I wanted to pick that question up as well and take it to Mr. N.C. Asthana. Mr. Asthana, you wanted to make a point here, and then my question to you is, why don't we take harder action against these tantric babas and people who openly indulge in witchcraft and even manage to get a big following? Why are we so hesitant to crack down on them?
No, that's the point.
With Dr. Manisha. Actually, many more people are capable of such behavior.
Yeah.
They do not do it simply because they have got their own constraints. Given a free hand, people would indulge in this type of behavior in much larger numbers. And as far as educating them is concerned, let us be honest about it, it's not an easy task. Developing scientific temper, people should also have their own desire to develop a scientific temper. I mean, you see, we have been teaching, say, for example, ethics in schools. Does that reduce the extent of corruption in this country? No, not at all. Teaching ethics as a subject does not help in developing an ethical temperament in the country. Similarly, by teaching chemistry or physics in the schools or university or wherever, I mean, these people themselves were highly educated. That did not really help them. So we, as you said, there is a certain degree of hesitation in this country in taking action against such irrational behavior because a large part of the country indeed believes that somehow or the other this is a part of our collective cultural, socio-cultural, religious tradition. And nobody wants to hurt that.
Yeah, but we're losing lives. We're losing young, innocent lives. It's often the young ones, the children who get sacrificed. I'm reading instances right now of this year, in December this year, in 2020 itself, Geeta, in a tantric ritual, allegedly smashed the head of her eldest son. Again, a young man, all of 25 years old, with a grindstone. Then she roasted his body with spices and camphor, put it in a big kadai, followed this entire ritual before dumping this bone somewhere. A man offered his daughter as a human sacrifice for wealth in Tamil Nadu, and he probably had a lot of issues and frustrations in his life. A construction laborer, misguided by somebody who said, okay, you do this and your life will change, you'll get some money, and he sacrificed his 13-year-old daughter. Sanal, that's the issue. Now, we cannot say, oh, because people have belief in it, let them go wild.
Shall I come in now?
Yes.
Yeah. See, the point is very simple. We all feel angry. But expressing our anger in rhetoric is not the solution. The solution starts by understanding the fine semantics of the whole structure. See, the whole problem is so I've been following similar cases for last several years, decades I've been following, closely watching, trying to understand the whole mechanism. If you preach science to these people, they are educated people. One was a chemistry professor. But preaching science is not a solution to these people, but to understand them, how they are working, how their mind is working. Reason sometimes, I'm an advocate of reason, fighting for reason, so agitatively fighting for reason, but reason does not work sometimes. There is a question of, cognitive dissonance. When a person is defending himself against reason with all his belief and faith and structures, whatever reason you put upon him, it does not work. The more reasoning argument you make, they make more and more defense against that. That's a cognitive dissonance. That kind of stuff is also to be understood. Also, this problem is to be addressed from so many different fine details, understanding deeply, not making sweeping statements at one side. Because this is a problem. This is an issue which happens in our country, not 10 cases, but several cases, maybe 100 cases every year. And also, there's a collective belief in these kind of rituals in our country.
Yes, but I think, a larger outrage and bigger statements and a noise needs to be created about it. The Burari death case happened a couple of years ago. What's happened since then? Has anybody turned around and said, oh, we need to address this? If in cities, people are falling for this kind of thing and taking their own lives and killing entire family, wiping off an entire family. And they had been practicing, weird rituals for a long, long time. And nobody intervened. Here is a family, well-educated, gold medalist, professors, vice principal in a college and principal in a school, believing that throwing dumbbells and stoning their own daughters is going to bring about a miracle to save them from Kali Yuga. I shudder to think, if this is how easily they fell for superstition, what is it that they have been teaching their students all this while? How will we ever bring about a change? We talk about the great icons of our country, the social reformers, but only to the point of putting their names and faces on posters, completely forgetting what their teachings were and believing and following those. Thank you to our panelists for joining us on this conversation. We will keep a track of this story, but I do believe a lot more people need to start talking about it and governments need to take action instead of tiptoeing around issues like tantric rituals and witchcraft.